Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and my name is Thompson. I want to talk to you about the role that the Christian faith plays in society, but more specifically, the way we view faith in society. Faith is often seen in modern analogies as a shot in the dark, a leap in hoping a net shall appear. Basically, it's a belief that's not based on any evidence, and a faith that doesn't seem to have any substance to it. To quote Richard Dawkins, he said, "Faith is the great cop-out, the great excuse to evade the need to think and evaluate evidence. Faith is belief in spite of, even perhaps because of, the lack of evidence." So I want us to re-examine whether Richard Dawkins is true and whether Christianity in particular has this kind of faith. So here's the claim I'll be defending. The claim I'm defending is that faith has become diluted in our society and placed in antithesis to the intellect or reason. You see a lot of people saying just have faith, or just have faith and hold on. You don't know what the outcome's going to be, and yet you just hope that the best is going to happen. There's no certainty in this kind of faith. But by reevaluating our present definitions of faith and reestablishing a connection with history, I hope to show that this is not true. The first thing to understand is that biblical understanding of faith is not purely emotional, nor does it assume that the intellect has no value or place in it. Deuteronomy chapter 6 verses 4 through 6 tell us that we are to love the Lord our God with all our heart, mind, soul, and strength. What that is saying is that with the intellect, with the heart, with the emotions, and with everything we are to love God. It is assumed in the Bible, in particular, relating to the Christian faith, that faith itself is rational, not just emotional. Let me explain another definition of faith. According to Francis Schaeffer, he's a philosopher, and about 1984 he wrote this book called The God Who Is There, and one of the things he points out is that Kierkegaard was a philosopher who popularized the idea that faith had no substance and had no reason behind it. He gives the example of Abraham in the Old Testament, saying that Abraham did not have any certainty regarding his faith. However, for a side note, if you were to look at Hebrews chapter 11, you'd see, in fact, that Abraham believed God and his promises with certainty, not with believing it was a shot in the dark. But basically, Kierkegaard is the one who popularized the phrase the leap of faith, and that into the intellect kind of took a backseat to faith. So Christianity, as a result of this, has gained the reputation for being a faith without evidence. But prior to this, Christianity had a reputation for being educative and academically reputable. An example would be Abraham Kuyper, who was the Prime Minister of the Netherlands, and he was also a theologian. So he was in control over a country, and he also had a very strong intellect in regards to the Christian faith. Also, another example is Jonathan Edwards, who was president of Yale a couple hundred years ago. Next thing is that a biblical definition of faith supports the use of the mind and the emotions. The Greek word for believe is pisteuo, often found in John 3:16 in the Greek. And what that word means is trust. And the word trust implies intellectual assent to information and a dependency with your will on a particular truth. And there are other references for mind, will, and emotions throughout the rest of the Old Testament. Another example, during the Reformation, there were three distinctions made between the different levels of faith. So you had notitia, assensus, and fiducia. And basically, it's just saying you go from receiving the information to finally trusting in that information, which is fiducia, or faith in Latin. Lastly, the role of faith has been, the role of intellectual faith has been rejected in our society, but really we should be standing on the fact that Christianity is a rational religion. Examples, B.B. Warfield, who said that Christianity is a rational religion, not just simply something that is ascended to in the emotions. Fred Zaspel says this in his Theology of B.B. Warfield, published in 2010. Another is that there's this impression that Christianity is only concerned with emotional needs and not rational data. A man by the name of Siegel says this in 2016 by saying that faith is canceled out by science. There's also the belief that the Christian faith only provides an environment that's purely emotional and not stable. Jessica Meisler for BuzzFeed News says this, that she grew up basically in church with just an emotional view of who God is, but once she studied the Bible in college through non-believing people, that she lost her faith in God because of that, establishing her faith as being different than reason. In the Bible, to not only believe with your emotions and your heart that God exists and that the Bible is true, but also with your mind, and that you should be prepared according to 1 Peter 3:15 to give a defense for your faith. Fred Zespel establishes this again in his book, mentioned earlier, that Christianity has a historical reputation as an intellectual and spiritual religion. And lastly, it's important to study why we believe these things and not simply assume that our beliefs don't matter or are just a shot in the dark. So in conclusion, Christianity is historically an intellectual belief, and faith is trusting in what you believe and what you know to be true, and not simply an emotional reaction. And that's what I wanted to establish today. Thank you very much for your time.